everyone. This is Dr. Linda McGhee with the SonRise Project, and I just want to welcome you all today. I'm going to start with the Serenity Prayer, and then we will move on to our topic today. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that prayer is really apropos for the topic that I want to talk about or want to throw out this morning, which is about maleness, what it's like to be a man in the 2020s. And I want to just start off with a couple of anecdotes, and I want to let you know that I am not going to be talking a lot today. I'm going to throw some questions out to Keith Lawson, who's one of our original founding members of the SonRise Project, and my son, Darian McGhee, who's, in my founding team. And they're going to talk to you from the perspective of parenting and being a man and becoming a parent, and also growing up and what's it like to become a man in this stages of times that we're in. The story that kind of got me is that one time, I don't even know, Darian, if you remember this, I was talking to Darian and he was in college and he was not doing sports anymore. And he was saying to me about how it's kind of hard for Black males to find their constituency on campus and to find their people and to figure things out, particularly African-American males who are like from the middle class. So that just started to make me think about what is it like to come of age right now? How do you find your group? How do you find out who you are? And I read this article and saw on MSNBC this article by story that was done by Christine Imba, who's an editor at the Washington Post, and I put it in the chat. And it just got me to thinking about how do we define maleness? How do we define masculinity? What is it like to be a male? And so what I'm going to do is with that, I'm going to ask you all out there who are listening in to put in your comments and chats and questions. And I'm going to toss out some questions. I'm going to start with Keith and just throw out the question is, Keith, in this time, how do you figure out what does it mean to be a man and what is it to be a good man?
You know what? I'm going to, if you give me a little grace, answer that in a sort of a longer story than you were probably anticipating. So the folks that have heard me speak on here before probably heard me tell a little bit about my story growing up in Baltimore, et cetera. So I'm going to do a really quick thing about what that was like for me. So, I have four siblings. I'm the next to the youngest. And for the longest time, I was the youngest for, 7 years. My mom and dad had somewhat of a challenging relationship, rocky, which ended up with my mom sort of just taking care of all of us and just hitting the road at a certain point, right? And part of that was a good part of it, if not all of it, had to do with the fact that my dad had gotten super frustrated in his role and what his space was in the family, and he had some other issues with alcoholism or whatever that were exacerbated by his frustration about what his life was supposed to be. Now, he was supposed to be a singer entertainer. He was in a group, he was doing things. I'm speeding through this just to get to the point. But once my mom got pregnant, he no longer was able to do what it was that he was planning to do with his life, what he thought he was going to do. And he did, in the 60s, what he thought it was that a man was supposed to do, which is, just take care of your family regardless. So he put his dreams and aspirations on the shelf to be able to start taking care of a family and got a regular job and that grind, and we struggled through. And how that played out for him was that it's something that didn't dawn on me till way, way later in life, is that when you are, as a man, especially a Black man in America, you're taught to just suck it up, deal with it, be a man, handle your business, take care of your family, not really talk about anything, not reach out for any type of help, not show any vulnerability. So he had to be tough. He had to suck it up. He had to get through. And how it affected our family was it basically destroyed the family, because it was destroying him on the inside, and it made him a person that we couldn't be around at a certain point. So we ended up leaving. That really framed, I mean, and I was probably, I don't know, 5 at that time, but that really framed how I thought about what families were and what the male's role was in that family. And I always said, which is unrealistic and unfair amount of weight to carry, is that when I have a family, I'm going to make sure everything is right. They're going to have everything they need. My sons will, if I have sons, and never have to worry about anything. I'm always going to be there. And so we set out with this whole example of what a perfect marriage and family was going to be. Fast forward to my son, Kyle, who is, obviously the reason we're doing the SonRise Project, started going off the rails. And I had no idea what I could have done differently, what I had done wrong, what could I, how could I help him? Because in my mind, it's like, I patterned my entire life, adult life and definitely married life, on being the absolute opposite of what I saw growing up for men. So it was like, I didn't drink in the house. I didn't smoke. They never saw, me and their mom argue, none of that. It was very restrictive, realistically. But when I went out with my friends, if I go out with my friends, we go to a bar or something, one, I barely drank to start with, but Black men don't really talk like that, They really get deep into a conversation. You say, hey man, how you doing? You say, fine, or, I'm tripping, my son's wild. Really? Have a beer. That's the end of the conversation. It's not like, when you see the women talking, they little delve in and they get emotional and they get vulnerable. But for men, it's like, you're not supposed to show any vulnerability. You're not supposed to, God forbid you got some tears coming, because these past few years have brought some tears. But what we had to, and what I had to start to unpack is, why is that, why is it necessary for me to carry all that weight alone, right? So, and why do old sort of thoughts and what people think the male role is supposed to be have to guide what I'm doing in my life and what's the best path forward for me and my family. So part of this whole SonRise Project and really opening up and sharing and all that has been a whole journey of what is really the path to go. Because there's, as I've said many a time, and I'm sure many of you, if any males are on here, said there's no rule book to this. Start out thinking you know what you're doing. We set out a path. We thought we knew what that path was. It went wrong. I don't know how many nights I've sat with my wife and she's gone through the, like, how did I mess this up? How did we mess this up? Am I a bad parent? And me on the same other side of the coin saying, I did everything I could to be a good role model, got a good job, work, don't drink, don't smoke, don't fuss and fight, none of those things. And we're still here. So,
right. I was gonna just point out that even when you're trying so hard to be a role model, it's still kind of putting your needs at the bottom, right? So in many ways, the story that you started off with, talking about your dad subordinating his needs, it's almost like you flipped over to the other side, but your needs still didn't take priority because you were trying so hard to be a good father.
Yeah, and I never thought about it like that, but as I was saying it and looking at you, I'm like, wow, that's the 180 degrees of the same thing for different reasons, but it's the thing. And a good portion of it, which again, I'm thankful for the ability to have a platform like this, is understanding, one, that you're not the only person going through this, and people are out here suffering and not knowing who to talk to. And then two, you don't have to do this on your own. And we didn't really start to make any real progress until I was able to really get vulnerable and sort of share and communicate on that level. And I also realized that my friend group, who was part of my therapy circle, actually do have some friends that I can really communicate and relate with on that level. And it's actually made us so much closer, versus the superficial, hang out, watch a ball game, have a beer, put some Robitussin on it and move on. So I'll close out and let Darian talk, but it just reminded me of that. Just yesterday, I had to go to New York for one of my best friends, John. Had a funeral service, and I went to support him, and just seeing his face, seeing me there, and being able to relate at that level, knowing the emotional pain he was going through, and me being able to actually talk to him on a level other than like give him a pound. It's like, you got this, was I could see was helpful. So
right.
I'll pause there and let Darian sort of step in if you have anything, because I could do that all day.
I mean, it's a perfect entrance, Keith, and thank you so much. But I'm going to go with this concept as I switch it over to Darian for a second, is this idea that stoicism, like you kind of keep a stoic front, you produce, work and money, and you support the home is sort of like some of the traditional aspects of what it's like to be a man. And there's not, what you describe is still such a narrow range where it's acceptable of emotions that are acceptable to express if you're a man. And I just kind of wanted to like bring your parts of your conversation around that point. It's just still a narrow range.
It is. And you know what? I'm gonna add this one last thing in reference to yesterday. So at one point, during the services that I was able to, because these crazy storms made it so that I had to run out of there to get back, because they started canceling all my flights. But at one point, my buddy's wife walked by me during the service, and she had to take a minute. She had to walk out. And she walked out, she goes, "This is killing me. I've never seen my husband cry. And like, this is just killing me." And I was like, wow, they've been married for, 35 years. And imagine like never ever being able to be as vulnerable as that. And I'm sure there have been occasions where that would have been apropos.
Right. Of course.
Time, because
of course.
Super close. So.
And it's, the hope that you sort of center on, though, is that things are changing and you are able to learn and see that you showing up for your friend, the look on his face would have probably worth all the trouble, all the weather that you had to go through to show him that you understood what he was going through and was there for him, is, like a way that this masculinity thing continues to evolve.
Yeah.
So Darian, what kinds of, and you need to unmute yourself, darling. What kinds of role models and what did you see growing up that kind of are helping you to evolve into the Darian will be 24 on Tuesday. What kinds of role models did you see, and what are some of the things that have helped you become a man and figure out what that means?
Well, in terms of becoming a man, I really think, first of all, your father is going to be the first person you look to understand what it means to be a man and how to grow and to develop as a man. But then you also look at other Black role models in your life who have had the same experiences you do or similar experiences to you. So like mentors or coaches, like a lot of my coaches in sports were people that I looked up to and looked to for advice. My high school football coach was one of them. And then other people in the media, because social media is such a big part of growing up now, especially. You see people that are dealing with similar stuff or similar paths, and it's more readily available to you than it was in the past. And you can see how things affected their life, and people are more open to talk about their past and their stories. So it's easier to, I guess, gain knowledge from the experiences that they had. Personally, being an only child, as you know, I kind of had to develop my own way of figuring it out. I kind of attack life and kind of like not a loner mentality, but like being okay with like myself and like being in my own space. Because as a Black man, sometimes it's hard to develop relationships outside like kind of forced social settings. So like a lot of people's friends that you develop as a Black man come from high school like playing basketball with your team, or maybe you're in a club with somebody, or maybe people in the neighborhood that you've known for a long time. A lot of times those are lifelong friends for you. So once you get to like college and past that, a lot of people struggle with maintaining or making more connections with other Black men that aren't really connected to them in the same way. And it's really hard, especially with social media now, to find like genuine connections with other people that are offline, because a lot of people are harder to connect with, because Black men especially are less emotionally available and open to talk, so you don't really get that same connection. So it's really about, finding yourself through the role models you've developed, like at a young age, like your coaches and your father figures and stuff like that. But if you don't have that, you got to kind of find your own way and find your own find a way to kind of make your own connections as you grow older, and not shut yourself out and limit yourself to just the people that you've known for like years and years.
What about the influences of people expecting you to be in the people that are kind of popular in the society, are the rappers and the athletes? And what about the fact that it seems to be a lot of push to be those things, as opposed to some of the other things that you were exposed to going to independent schools, like academician and those kinds of things? What about the coolness factor of being a Black male?
I think that definitely is hard, because even I would love to be a famous rapper, athlete. It's just that it would be cool to be like one of them. So it's definitely hard to try to like balance like what you see on like in social media, and like what's actually like a realistic goal for yourself, because you see it so much on social media. You're like, I want to be that basketball player, I want to be that, but like realistically it's such a small percentage. So you gotta maintain like a sort of tough, cool persona as a Black man. Like a lot of people like to be good at sports even when they're not professional athletes. Like they like to be LA Fitness hoopers, or a lot of people want to be like SoundCloud rappers. So a lot of people are still trying to pursue that level of cool at even to like late 30s, when you're like, come on, dude, give it up. Like the pro dream and the rap dream is over with. But I think all you can do is really just try to either go out your way to find people in your field that are kind of moving away from that, and trying to find other ways to be impactful, other than just the more popular things like athletes and rappers. And also it's up to those people to promote their field more and get the word out there and reach back to the younger generation, and show them that there's other ways to be successful other than the main ones that are just shown for young African Americans.
Can I jump in real quick just on
yes,
the social
please.
media?
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, the one thing that's different with this generation that we all understand is that they have social media, which we did not have. I feel like social media has been one of the strongest drivers of this rise in depression and anxiety and, issues with self-image, because as we well know, folks will put up a snapshot of an instant of their life, and people, at home watching it think their life is like that all the time. And in fact, oftentimes it's not even like it for that time, because I've seen people stage environments to make things look like. I've seen, young ladies wake up, put on makeup, make their whole face, and then take a just woke up like this selfie, right? And post it. Like, I just woke up looking beautiful, perfect lighting. And you have young ladies around the country trying to emulate that. And, the fear of missing out thing is a crazy driver, because folks are looking at these young people, young men, especially looking at these images on social media and wanting to emulate, and to your point, like the athletes and so forth. One of the issues one of the factors that really pushed, Kyle's journey down the path that he was on is once he, like you said, decided he didn't want to be a swimmer anymore, and all of the sort of positive affirmation and all endorphin rush he got from being called a swimmer, oh, he's going to the Olympics, et cetera, et cetera. Once he realized he was not happy with the sport itself, he liked what came with it, but he didn't particularly want to swim, and decided he wanted to do something else. From that moment on, he was searching for ways to get that same rush, that same feeling, that same adulation from other places. And then he was lost. So, we had spent so much time in that world trying to be the supportive, swim parents, that we didn't, I guess, I don't know if we didn't allow him to, or we never saw him reaching out to develop in other areas. And he didn't have a proper role model, because where we wanted him to grow up in the best school districts put him in environments where there weren't a lot of people to look like him. So he's on his mission of trying to find himself, which was, more and more destructive, and ended up where we are because he was looking for ways to get that adulation. I want to, I'm going to get with these guys, or, not Black kids, and, try to be the cool Black guy that they get to hang out with to legitimize their situation. So they're hanging out with him. He's getting into more issues like, smoking and drinking and, doing some of those things that is just not what we do in my household, that is.
Right.
So,
and Keith and Darian is, sorry, Keith, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries.
The numbers say that there aren't that many role models in these atmospheres that we're placing our children in. I remember reading this article, not the one that's posted, but another article about how at one year at UCLA, there were only 43 Black males in a class of 6,000 kids that were not athletes. 43 Black males that were not athletes. And, that comes to the point that I was trying to make at the beginning of the cycle, is that, trying to find your way on a campus for Darian and University of Maryland, where you're no longer in athletics. How do you find your way? And in the article that I put up, they're talking about how the male population in the colleges are going down. And now for every 74 degrees a male gets, girls get 100.
Wow.
Right. So, and the precipitous drop in college population is not so much due to a population drop so much as it is a male dropping off, So Darian, I want to go back to you and see if we could kind of tie that comment into like what it's like on campus when you first, particularly you identify with sports, and then when you don't identify with sports.
Sure. So first off, when I started at Maryland, I kind of knew a couple people there, so that helped my experience. First off, I knew some of the athletes there, so I was able to find some group that I hang out with. But a lot of times they would be busy, so in order to find like my own group, like I had to like do certain activities on campus to find like people to hang out with that look like me, that I could relate to. Certain clubs, like I had to navigate and try to figure out if this is something I could do. They had clubs for like African students, but then I wasn't really like that into like the African studies and stuff like that, so that didn't really fit with me. And sometimes they would have certain clubs that had a lot of Black kids, but it wasn't really like an area of interest. Like it would be something like playing in music or like the jazz band. I'm like, I don't really do this, so I don't know how I would be able to relate to these kids. So after like the first semester, it was kind of hard to, I guess, find like your group. You feel like you're starting high school all over again, but it's a big high school and there's kids that you see maybe once a week and then don't see again like the next semester or something like that. So maintaining those connections is really hard, but you gotta find some type of group where you can relate to somebody. For me, I used to always go to the athletic center after class, and like either work out or like play basketball or something like that. And I found out there was a lot of kids at the school that would play basketball at certain times during the day, and they would be involved in other clubs and stuff too. And that's how I connected with other people. I found people that I played basketball with, and that's how I started connecting with them. And then that's how I expanded my connections across campus. I would be with them. I would talk to them about other stuff that's going on campus. They would invite me to other events on campus. So it was lucky for me to find that group of people that could connect me to the whole like landscape of like UMD. But if I'm giving advice to somebody else, it's just find something, whether that be a club, whether that be some people in your class, anything that you can find where you can connect to like a group of people that you actually share a common interest with. That to me is how you find like connections as a Black male in college.
Did you think that like there are a lot of men on campus who may be like depressed or down, but they don't have any outlets or places where they could talk about things?
For sure. There were people in the group at the athletic center that literally just came to the athletic center to hoop, and they were like, I got a class at like 6 or something like that, and you wouldn't see them like ever go to class. So yeah, I definitely think there were people that were kind of lost and like they didn't really have anything other than like just class at campus. They would just go to class and go home. I think I don't really have the answer to how to combat this, but I definitely think there should be ways for young Black men on campus to kind of let out their emotion in like healthier ways, or like talk about their struggles on campus without just kind of having to be alone to just deal with it on their own. But I honestly don't know how Maryland would go about doing that. But yeah, there definitely is people that they're struggling on the campus.
Well, you know, the campus counseling and people across the country are struggling with this issue about how to get boys and young men to talk. But I kind of want to turn this conversation over, and Keith, you can join in too, but I'll start with Darian about this idea that there's aspects of masculinity that are attractive to women. And even sometimes it's very confusing messages to men, right? They're taught that certain aspects are not attractive, but then girls say they're kind of attractive, just the roughnecks, and then not attracted to nice guys. And so Darian, I want you to start, and then Keith, I want you to come in and say, like, how do you navigate this issue? And do you see it? Darian, I'm gonna start with you.
Oh my goodness. When it comes to navigating how I guess women see you in a dating pool, this is hard. There's a way that you have to like present yourself at first. Well, there's a way that I present myself, and I kind of present myself with like a kind of tough exterior, like kind of like not like trying to be like hyper masculine, but you know, like present myself as like a man that can be the provider, the traditional male role, I guess I should say. The traditional, that's how I go about it. And it's hard because you don't really know what it is that is like that modern women like want for real, like nowadays, because there's so much people into talking about what toxic masculinity is, and like being overly masculine, and you know, talking about your emotions. But then at the same time, if you were to do that, they're not really attracted to that, and it's not really something that a lot of them are looking for. So it's kind of like you gotta find like that balance of still being like the traditional male role, but still like kind of being like taking it back and remembering, like, you know, society's progressing a little bit, and you still want to be able to open up and talk about your emotions in like healthy ways without being too not too hyper masculine in a sense.
Right. But it is hard. That's you pointing out the whole dilemma. You know, there are parts of masculinity that are attractive to women, right? And then there's no automatic hyper in front of the words masculinity, right? There's some parts of masculinity are attractive, but that is confusing out there, particularly for you younger guys, to figure out how to be.
And social media doesn't help. Like it makes it way worse, because you'll think you're doing something right or doing the right way or like something like that, but you'll see somebody else on social media doing it this way and like attracting women, and you'll think, oh, I'll do it that way, but it doesn't work for you the same way. And and then the expectations that women have for certain men now is unrealistic because of social media and like what they've seen. Like, oh, this guy could buy me so and so, and this, and he could be a masculine man, and he can be an intelligent man, and he can share his feelings at the same time. I'm like, that's kind of rare. Like, I don't know if you're gonna find that in a lot of men.
Right.
So,
Keith,
look, I'll say this. I'm gonna keep it a buck, right? I've that's 100 for anybody that missed that. I'm gonna keep it 100. I growing up in Baltimore, I was that guy I was always a nice guy, and I ain't never win. Like, I ain't win to a college trust when I tell you I was not winning. I was a nice guy. And I always wonder why, growing up in these rough environments and all of these, criminal, violent types around, the rough guys and then the drug dealers. And I'm like, why are all the women that I would love to date hanging with these guys? Like, they're clearly not good for them. And it's always something bad. They're putting themselves in dangerous situations, hanging out with these guys because they look tough and violent. They can protect them. I'm like, but the things they're protecting you from, the things that they're exposing you to at the same time. So, I was always on the other side of that, right? And I never understood why, I think it takes a life lived. You get to 30s and out. Now I go back home and all of those guys are either in jail or didn't somehow make it out. And all those women that were nowhere in the vicinity of me are like, oh my gosh, like what's going on with you? Like, up too late, I had to wait it out to get my shot. Life has a way of balancing things out. But I want to get to the thing you said about was something about role models. That's sort of, I think, an issue. So when I think about how we approach, what the roles of a man should be, and especially a Black man, I think we are also confusing our kids. So, one of the things that I noticed throughout this thing is dealing with my younger son is he just wouldn't talk at all. Everything's fine. Like, Chris, how are you? I'm good. He was going through whatever he's going through in the midst of all that we're dealing with our older son. And he wouldn't say anything. He was a tough guy. He was like, I'm fine. I don't need to talk to anybody. Everybody else needs therapy. You guys are crazy. I'm good. And Linda can attest to this. Wouldn't say anything, but all of these things, regardless of whether you see them immediately, it's just like an analogy I've been using lately about seeing a duck swim. Like, on the surface, it's calm. You don't see anything, but underneath the surface, his feet are patterned like a mofo. That's sort of how I think about what my younger son had to be processing all this. He's like mad processing going on underneath, but because of the way we, especially as Black men, is what we're talking about here, don't have that same level of vulnerability, normally, and it's not, it's not taught to expose that. You got to be a tough guy, you got to power through. I think we're damaging our youth at the same time. So you're showing them some level of strength, but at the same time, you're emotionally damaging them. And I've had a conversation this with the other son recently, where I said, you know what, until you're able to really deal with whatever you're dealing with emotionally, mentally, all of that, you're never going to be the partner for anybody else that you see yourself being. You're like, I almost feel sorry for anybody that steps in right now and just accepts, oh, he's a handsome, attractive, athletic, man, and not having the benefit of knowing all this paddling underneath that surface. So I'm like, you gotta slow down that paddling, get somebody to talk to, and understand that it's fine to be vulnerable. You don't have to be tough all the time. You don't have to I'm good. You know what? I'm handling mine. You know, that's not healthy.
Right.
And I've learned that.
Not showing vulnerability, but also this idea, Keith and Darian, of like, it hurts my heart when I hear y'all talk about like the nice guy who follows the rules, who goes to college, who's nice to girls. You know, it's a hard sell when I'm dealing with and counseling males, young males, that's who I work with basically now. The only ones I'm working with now is males. And it's a tough sell to get them to stay them, right? Because the world is telling them, you got to be tougher, you got to be harder to get girls. And so, like, how do you stay you? Both of y'all, I want y'all to address that. How do you stay you and stay true to yourselves when everybody's telling you that, like, the hard guy gets this, and, you know, the stoic, tough, competitive, aggressive guy gets the spoils?
I'll start because it's on my heart right now. I was lucky enough in my family to have 2 older sisters, and then my mom as my main role model. So for real, because my dad was not in my life really in a significant way after probably 5, my role models were coaches and teachers from a male standpoint. But then I had these sisters who were strong, and my mom who was crazy strong, and she would always say, you know what, you know, regardless of what anybody else thinks, this is what I think. This is who I know you are. This is who I raised my son to be. So I was, you know, that was the thing that kept me, you know, within the rails for the longest time. And, you know, I sort of focused. I was sort of like, when I think about it, sort of like Chris in a way. It's like, I would just, you know, I would have my hands over my ears studying, and there's crazy stuff going on outside. And I was in my own world with a path. And I think I'm just lucky enough to be a person that's really a free thinker. I'm like, where I am is not where I am going to be. This is not the destination. It's just a path and a space that I have to pass through to get where I'm getting. So luckily, I had those female influences in my life to sort of tell me, like, don't worry about it. Don't try to change for anybody. You know, don't worry about your glasses have tape on them. You'll work that out. So
Marion?
I did.
Well, took me a second to figure this out, you know, still being young. But, you know, when I was in high school and early college, you know, I tried to be like, you know, change a little bit or be like kind of that cool guy, because it would work. I'm not gonna lie, it would work to get these girls. But I realized a lot of times those are relationships or interactions or friends that wouldn't last, because, you know, eventually your true self is going to show. The way the person you are is always going to show once you're talking to somebody for a while. So I really don't see the point of trying to act anymore. If you like me, you like me, you know. And I have goals and stuff that I'm focused on, and it's more like, you know, I'm a bus or a train. You know, if you want to get on and be on the bus and be on the train and go where I'm going, that's cool. If not, you weren't meant to be for me anyway. But, you know, at the same time, you can't change who you are to please somebody else. You gotta figure out your own path. And I think that's when you find the really special people in your life, really special women. Those people that are willing to accept you for you and not try to change you and not trying to make you someone you're not. So when you find people that will actually, you know, pursue you for the things that you like, or the mindset that you have, or the way that you treat them, I think those are the ones that'll last longer and be healthier relationships in the long run. So right now, focus on myself, and eventually, you know, someone's going to come in my life that's going to be that person for me. So,
you know, Darian, you said something that was very interesting, like worrying about other people trying to make you somebody that you're not. But it's just as many of us and our young kids that are trying to make themselves somebody that they're not due to influences of what they're seeing in social media, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it is what gets reinforced.
Yeah.
It's what gets reinforced. I remember, like when you have a child, you see people come out like for the things that, for one limited set of things, like they come out for the games. But I remember having to like call relatives one time. I don't even think Darian probably doesn't even remember this. But when there was like an honor roll ceremony, right? I texted relatives to come because, like there's no natural constituency for like a Black male doing well in school, right? And so like, you have to, you're right, people do try to shape you, and you are trying to shape yourself, but you're going on a lot on what is reinforced and what is cool. And even the parents push and keep, I know about this in the sports area, the parents have so much invested and involved in it and not so much involved in other things. I wanted to go to this question because I worked in, for those of you who know me on the line, I worked a lot in boys' schools. I work a lot with boys now. Is, trying to find, the question is about if your kid's not sporty. And that's a question that I have a lot because I have the kind, gentle souls in my office now who are suffering the most. What I've been trying to work with parents with is that it doesn't have to be sports. Let them be them. If there's something that they're interested in, reinforce that, and let them, develop in that area and take guitar lessons or sound production or, whatever it is that they want to do, and people like say to me, well, music's not a career or this. I'm like, but let the world decide that, right? Let your child follow their interests, right? That you've eventually going to come upon the fact that there's only 300 and something people in the NBA, right? Or 300 concert violinists, but let them follow their interests instead of always trying to pigeonhole them into what it's like to be a man and what it's like to be a Black man and what interests you have, which I find that the parents, as Keith was just saying, the parents are often the issue. The kids will tell me what they want to do, and then they tell me why their parents won't let them do it. I guess what I want to come back to you, Keith, on before we take a couple of questions is, Keith, what's your advice for like boys that are out there? Well, wait a minute. What's your advice for men out there who are trying to figure themselves out and parent at the same time? It's like you're trying to refuel a plane while you're in mid-flight, right? You're trying to figure out who you are and how you've been parented and making up for that and trying to parent somebody at the same time.
Yeah, I'll tell you, at certain points, it felt like I was being drawn and quartered. Like I had, 4 horses and my limbs tied, one each, and they were all going in different directions. And that it was like my upbringing and how I was taught to parent. We came up in the corporal punishment era where, something went wrong, you got a spanking. Now you can't put you can't put your hands on the child. You end up in child protective services. And I always used to say, like, I can spank them now or you can arrest them later. That was sort of a mentality come up there. Keep them on, keep that spare the rod, sport the child mentality. But that's not the environment that we're in yet. And then, studies have shown that wasn't necessarily the best way. And we always say, well, we made it through, but that doesn't apply. The life is different, environment is different, circumstances are different. The entire world is different.
It's nothing, Baltimore 1980 is nothing like Bethesda 2023. It's just not.
1960 is not like Bethesda.
Yes.
2020 for sure.
But, I get that all the time, Keith. The parents are the ones that are coming and saying to me, like, this worked for me. I'm like, did it though? I mean, I'm being real straight with y'all here. Right. Why are you here if it worked for you? Right. So, and it doesn't always, what we think worked for us has left us traumatized in many instances. And I'm keeping it on the 100 on this because this is one of my big arguments with parents that come in is that this worked for us, right?
Right.
Darian, what, in terms of a boy that's trying to find himself, what would you say to them for the ones that are pushing against stereotypes and want something different for themselves and want to define maleness in different ways? What would you say? So hold on a second, Darian. Somebody who's on the screen as Zoom user needs to mute themselves. Go ahead, Darian.
So I'm sorry, what's the question again?
The question was, how do you talk to boys? And I know you do a lot of this. That's why I had talked you into coming on today. I know you talk to a lot of guys younger than you, and you do coaching and you work with kids via athletics and other things. How do you talk to them about being them and learning how to express themselves in ways that are healthy?
Well, a lot of it has to do with limiting either your perception of what social media is, or just taking time away from social media, because honestly, the more time you're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok now, the more depressed and anxious you're going to be, because you're going to be comparing yourself to those people who are more successful than you, better looking than you, have more girls than you, more friends than you. So being on that 24/7, it's gonna hurt your mental, just being on social media. So a lot of it is, finding time to take a break from that, finding time to even do something that you just enjoy doing with like your friends, whether that be like video games, or it doesn't have to be sports, like music, something other than being on social media, going outside, finding time for yourself. That's another thing I feel like is important for the youth nowadays, is being able to embrace the time to check in with yourself, even though that's not necessarily deemed as cool, but you need to take time to recalibrate and, check in with yourself. But in terms of advice for people that aren't like, really sporty, how to navigate, because that was one of the things we were discussing earlier. I was a person that was like, I guess, would be in many different like social groups. So I wouldn't say, even though I did play a lot of sports, I wouldn't say I'm like the sports guy. Like I'm not like a jock guy. I also had like groups where I was like in business groups where I was in music, you know what I'm saying? Like met like a lot of different types of people. So I'm not just like in the sports world. So to me, when people ask like, oh, my son's not really sporty, so he doesn't really have a lot of friends, I'm like, I feel like there's other ways, to connect with. Like there's probably more musicians and like artists and other people you connect with than there are athletes, Plus athletes aren't the most emotionally connectable people anyway.
Right.
So I just think it really is just about finding what you're passionate about, and then finding people who share a similar passion, and being able to connect with them.
Are you able to talk to boys about getting therapists? Does that ever come up?
It's a hard topic, because whenever a young black man hears therapy, they think something's wrong, like they're crazy or something like that. So the stigma behind it, like, even friends my age, like if I told them like about therapy, they'd be like, no, I don't need that. One of my friends told me one time that, hey, like y'all are my therapy, my friends are my therapy. Like I just ask y'all, like, or talk to y'all. I'd be like, that's cool that we could be like a support system for you, but like sometimes your friends are idiots. Not going to sugarcoat it. Your friends don't have all the answers. So sometimes you need that outlet, that where you can discuss your feelings and how you're truly feeling deep inside, and stuff that you're actually struggling with that you may not want to discuss with your friends. If you're being real, you don't want to talk about everything that you're dealing with your friends, because some of it's personal stuff that you don't feel like you can, some people close to you can handle. So that therapy is a good release, and a good way to discover more things about yourself. I learned more in therapy about myself that just through talking stuff out than I learned ever talking to my friends. So
Yeah.
I think just being able to discuss it with somebody really lets you evaluate like how you're actually doing. Like sometimes I'll say something out my mouth and then I'll be like, huh, like I didn't even know I felt like that, like really thinking about it. So I think that's why it's important, because you never really know how you're truly feeling, or sometimes you know and you just kind of ignore it or suppress it as a Black man. So
Keith?
No, I saw Angela had a hand up. I don't know if she had a question. If not, I'll go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Keith. I do have a question for Darian. What would you respond to, like, or what would you recommend for a high school student? Like, what is the answer? How can we begin to solve this problem where young Black boys or young Black men like yourself don't have an outlet? Would you respond to something like the SonRise Project, or like what would be of interest? How can we help address it?
in terms of getting like high schoolers to like find an outlet, I think one of the problems is just the stigma behind it, and like therapy and like talking about it. So I think just like talk, like making it more like a, not a required course, but something that's talked about in the schools, you know, like making therapy something that's brought up as like a part of like the school like curriculum, you know, how they have like
Normalized.
normalized, yes.
Mhm.
Like how they talk about stuff like sexual education or stuff, how they talk about financial literacy now is more important. You know, they stress that in high school at a younger age for so making it something as important as like that, and discussing that more in high school, I think could make it more of a more accessible to high schoolers would be the way I would do it. And also providing like, I guess, forums where you can talk that are like anonymous as well, because a lot of people just don't want to be like, you know, face to face or talk to it or have their name like exposed. And so just having like forums where you can talk to somebody anonymously would be helpful to high schoolers as well.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and again, that's the real reason that we do this the way we do it, because the whole idea was a lot of folks want to talk. They don't necessarily want to show their faces. They may just want to come on and know, which is a great part of this forum. But I think it's sort of important. It's tantamount really for that we get to a space where we can break the stigma of it all. Because I mean, I often say to everybody, at least everybody that I know, Black families for sure, has somebody in their family with some sort of issue, mental illness or something, anxiety, depression, that they sort of just treat like they're, you know, troll living under a bridge, and you just, you know, push them away. They don't want to talk about it. Either they don't talk about it at all, or they say, no, it's fine, you know. And it's like a thing to be embarrassed about, as opposed to if you had, you know, a broken leg, you would go to the doctor and you get a cast on it, and everybody would come and sign your cast. So the whole community is around you in that way. But why is it that we made this whole mental wellness, mental health thing a taboo subject is the question. So it's really about breaking that stigma, so that being able to have those conversations is just a normal thing, versus, you know, if I say it, I'm embarrassed and I got to go hide, which is, you know, what, you know, our kids are being taught is suck it up. I see the men, suck it up. Nothing's wrong with you. You're not crazy.
It's getting better. You know, I mean, you can even see the conversation go sliding from Keith to Darian, you know, a little bit. It's getting better, but we still have a lot of work to do, y'all. You know, and so one of the points of having shows like this is for everyone out there to normalize when their child needs help, normalize when you need help, right? And you need someone to talk to, you feel that pressure. You know, this could be like 4 or 5 shows, because we didn't even get on the fact that men are feeling lonely. And that's one of the reasons that's driving the suicide rate. But I want to just take 1 second here. We got a couple more minutes, and see if there's anyone out there that wants to ask a question out loud. Anyone else have one question? We have time for one question.
Nobody.
All right, no one, no takers.
Did we answer that last question that was in the chat?
Yeah.
That person that asked about that, if they felt like that answered what their question was, because the connection is very key. And I know in our story, that connection was a big driving factor for, how things went left. But what I will say is, having had kids who were in sports and then knowing what I was like not in sports, it's really about, again, finding whatever that interest is, and parents being open to, sort of having the path change, like, because it's not about the life that you dream. Like, this is what I usually say: the children are not the children of your dream; it's the children that you have. So we had a child of our gene. We had it planned out. He's going to do this. He's great in school. He's good looking. He's an athlete. He's going to go. He's got Olympic aspirations. But then that wasn't who he actually was, and we had to take that path and try to, through a lot of therapy, a lot of talking, a lot of trying different things to get on that path with them and understand that at the end of the day, what we want is our young men to be healthy, happy, and have lives that, where they can take care of themselves and in a positive way. So what that means for us, we thought was go to college and do this exactly this way. That's not always the answer. So you have to really be able to relate with the kid, find out where they're coming from and what their interests are, and try to support them in that way. And then hopefully within that, they'll be able to find their people, find their rhythm in their society that where they can fit in a way that makes sense.
I think it's really beautiful how both of you express how you found your own way. You found strength in your support systems. To be able to figure out, even though Keith is further along the road than Darian, but to try to figure out who you are amongst all of this and to get the support that you need to sort of navigate this path of Black masculinity, and Keith with the path of Black parenthood. And the underlying message is that you have to take care of your own self in terms of all of this. And I want to close out today by saying we haven't forgot about the girls. I want to do a show about the girls because the girls accomplish and achieve, but they're doing it at a cost. And so I want to end with a prayer today. And I think, Kiara, are you there? Are we ready for our prayer?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Here, sorry about that.
No worries.
All right. So, Father God, we thank you. We thank you for another Sunrise Sunday. We thank you for Kelli, Keith, and the Lawson family for providing this platform. We thank you for Dr. Linda and Darian McGhee, who joined us along with Keith today for this enlightening discussion. We pray that their testimonies touch those that are listening in on this call in a very impactful way. God, we pray that male role models come forth and that Black men begin to experience a pressure valve release through open dialogue and community support. We pray that they find safe spaces to operate in true authenticity, and that as a village, we are more intentional in developing more of these spaces. We pray your blessing over each and every person on this call. May they have a powerful, productive, positive, and peaceful week. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much. And you all have a blessed week. And I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Darian.